This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Helping you find emotional, spiritual, and physical balance. What does your future hold? It's time to find out with Psychic Suzanna.
Right where you need to be, KFAB is the station. It's everything you want to find out and hear about is right here on KFAB. You can join us. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna. Join us every Sunday night at 7:30 where we bring you authors, people who will inspire you, educate you, take you along this life we have and help you grow and empower you with knowledge. That's what it's all about. Please join us on Facebook, Life with Psychic Suzanna. I sent out a little email on Facebook telling you who's there, who's coming up. Also, Susanna Stickney, and gives you the appearances where I'm at. I also like to put out once a day my intention. And add it, my intention, if we have intentions to making this world a better place, wouldn't it be a great thing? So join me on Facebook, Susanna Stickney on Twitter, and you'll get those updates. Also, KFAB.com, guess what's coming up? Dennis, tell us, do you know what's coming up, Dennis? I have a new producer here, Dennis.
I have no idea.
We have the auction.
Oh, the auction.
The KFAB auction is
Right.
going to start a week from Friday. How cool is that?
Not much time.
Oh, my God. And they have things on this auction that will blow you away that you can get at a great price. So you check it out on KFAB. That's where you find it.
Is that KFAB.com?
You bet your booties, Dennis. I'm so glad you knew that. All right. Also, if you go to PsychicSuzanna.com, you get a free question. I'm all caught up so we can start answering your questions. Now, I did not realize when I got this book that I was going to have such a popular, well-known woman in town on air with me. I'm pretty darn excited about this. I'm talking to Nancy Rips. Nancy Rips wrote a book called Seder Stories.
Seder Stories.
And I'm very honored to have you in here. Your little resume is 2 pages long, but I feel a little minuscule compared to this, darling.
I should have left out some stuff.
All right, now. These are you wrote a book called Seder Stories. First of all, what is the Seder?
Okay, Susanna, so I'm so happy to meet you. I've heard about you. I've listened to you for a number of years.
Thank you.
I'm impressed with you, and I've never seen your resume. But
okay,
you are quite something. Okay,
I'm very sweet in this. Let's talk about you, Nancy.
Back to me.
I want to talk about this book, and let me tell you, first of all, I am a devout Christian. I come from that place.
Sure.
And Christ was a Jew. And how I came about looking for you is trying to understand Christ better. And by going through the Seder Stories, looking up your book, that is how I'm going to understand my faith. I believe that all faiths have something to offer.
I agree.
And I think the problem is we don't investigate.
You're right.
So tonight we're investigating the Jewish religion with you, Nancy. Let's talk.
What's
smart? Seder Stories?
How smart. Okay. Seder means order. Seder is a holiday in the spring every year. The basic meaning of the holiday is Passover. Okay. Seder is the dinner at home with the service. But the holiday is Passover. Passover is a holiday of freedom, liberation, when the Jews were slaves in Israel. This is going back to biblical stories.
Right.
And that's what Seder means, freedom. And the reason we celebrate it every year is there are people still enslaved all over the world. Even in 2012, there are people, and not just in Darfur or in the Middle East. There are black people still enslaved. There are women, gays, all sorts of people who are not free for one reason or another. And
so Seder is freedom stories.
Exactly. Liberation. Seder means order. It's the order of the Passover dinner. The dinner is a Seder. It's at home. One of the reasons it's so popular, and it's the most celebrated Jewish holiday in North America because it's celebrated in the home. It's not in the synagogue. And families come together, whether they're observant at all through the whole year. They come together. One lady in my book said, you got to be there if you're living or dead, and even dead isn't a real excuse. You better have a note. And you come together as a family to remember generation to generation. I think all religions are about our stories. We pass on our stories from generation to generation.
And I believe if we don't know our history, we will not know our future.
You're exactly right.
We will not know our future. And now my husband right now is reading the Old Testament. And this is what the stories are about, aren't they?
Exactly.
The Old Testament and the... So he has a whole bunch of questions for you.
Okay. Where is he?
I want to start him. He told me what to ask you.
No kidding.
Oh,
well, why don't I just speak directly to him?
Well, how about to all the audience? Okay. Teach us what a beauty your faith is, because, as I understand, it's centered around tradition.
It is.
Amen on that.
But, I have to tell you, I'm not an expert, a religious expert.
No, you did write a book on Seder Stories, and that's why you're in here.
I have become very knowledgeable about Jewish holidays. Go ahead.
Let's go ahead about that.
Okay.
All right. The first thing by the way, where did you get the idea for the book?
I'll tell you exactly. It happened at one of my Seders at my house. We were going around doing the regular Seder service.
Which is what?
In the Haggadah. The Haggadah is the name of the book we use, and it tells the story of Passover, how we were slaves in Egypt. And it's divided into sections. One of the sections is the 4 questions, and I'm sure you've heard about.
We're going to talk about the 4 questions.
Okay, well then I'm not going to tell you. We're going to talk about it. And at my Seder, one year at my Seder, I started asking people around my table, what are your favorite memories of Passover? And they started telling the most wonderful, illuminating stories. We just put down the Haggadahs, let's just keep that among ourselves, and kept on telling stories. And as a longtime bookseller, I knew there were thousands of books literally on Passover. And every year there's about 100 or so more published. But never once has there been a book about people's personal stories. And that's how this book began.
And I love this because we have stories of all sorts of things. And one of them is Marlon Brando.
Do you love it?
How did he get to a Seder?
All right.
Tell me the story with Marlon Brando.
Okay. I found this man in Duluth, Minnesota. You know what? I forgot his name. You probably have it in your notes. He sells that fake fish, you buy in the grocery store. Maybe you don't buy it, but I see it in the grocery store, that fake crab. You've seen it in those plastic zip wrap, tightly zapped.
Vacuum sealed.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. He lives in Duluth, Minnesota. And I found a story of his about his Passover with Marlon Brando. And I emailed him and I said, oh my gosh, I got to find out how you did this. And he said he was visiting relatives in California and he got an invitation. They were all going to go to the Seder at the synagogue. And he knew Marlon Brando. His son and Marlon Brando's son were friends. And Marlon happened to call him because he heard he was in California. And he wanted to take him out for dinner. And he said, well, I'm going to the Seder at my synagogue. Do you want to come? Oh, yeah. Anyway, Marlon Brando came. Bob Dylan came, if you read the whole story.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah. And they sang, and it was fabulous. The stories in my book are also different. There's a Seder in a prison. There's a Seder in the governor's mansion in Hawaii. Linda Lingle has a Seder every year. There's a Seder in a Holocaust survivors hospital in Israel. There's a Seder in France. This lady emailed me. She said, the Seders in France are just the same as yours. We just have better wine.
Oh, I love that. I love that. We're going to take a small break. We're coming back. We have in our studio, and I got to tell you, she's electric. She's lighting up the studio. You should see Dennis. We have Nancy Rips here, and she wrote the book Seder Stories, Passover Thoughts on Food, Family, and Freedom. We'll be right back. This is 1110 KFAB, right where you need to be every Sunday.
Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. She knew I was going to say that.
Yes, it's 7:30, and you're on KFAB. And this is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Put up that background music. Do you recognize that music?
Oh, you know what? I'm not listening. I got to put on my headphones. I apologize.
Tradition.
Ah, perfect.
From Fiddler on the Roof, we are playing a tradition on Life with Psychic Suzanna. This show tonight is about educating us on the Jewish religion and the Jewish path. And you can join us, by the way, every Sunday night at 7:30. Only place you need to be to grow and become empowered and have some knowledge you didn't have the week before. Please find us at PsychicSuzanna.com. You get a free question. You get the schedule. Please join us on Facebook. Life with Psychic Suzanna lets you know who's coming up. Susanna Stickney on Twitter and Facebook lets you know what's going on. Gives you an intention to join me on. So together, mind by mind, thought by thought, we can we can get stronger each day. Dennis, the music up again. I want it in the background, baby. KFAB.com is the place you come. We're going to start the auction next week. And we are talking tradition.
Tradition.
We are talking tradition, and we are talking tradition with the author of Seder Stories. Now, she's written, this is Nancy Rips, who wrote Seder Stories. Tell me what you were about to say.
Alan King once said when Fiddler on the Roof opened on Broadway in the late 60s, he took his mother to see it. He said, oh, she's going to love this. She grew up on the shtetl in Russia, and she's going to feel right at home and enjoy the people. So they went to Fiddler, and they went, and they applauded and saw the whole show, and they're walking out of the theater, and he said, so Ma, what'd you think of Fiddler? Did it remind you of being at home in Russia? She said, well, yes, but Alan, I don't remember so much singing.
I love that. I love that.
Tradition in Judaism is core. You know, I think it is in every religion. That's why we're all so much alike.
We are more alike than separate.
Exactly.
More alike than separate.
And my books are all people's stories. And I do believe that's all we have to pass down. We don't have money. We don't have jewels. You have jewels. But, you know, we have our stories. And that's why it's so important. 2 weeks ago in the synagogue, every week they read a portion of the Torah, which is the Hebrew Bible. And 2 weeks ago, the portion was called Zachor, which means remember. And that is so important in Judaism, in every religion. But we have to teach our children so they remember there was a Holocaust, so they remember we were not always free, to appreciate and to help other people.
Well, I think the important thing is that when we don't learn from the lessons, we reoccur. We repeat the lessons. And I was watching a show of Oprah. She was interviewing a Holocaust survivor. And I did not know that one of the camps was as big as 6 football fields.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, 6 football. Yeah, Haram.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about that. And how could you? And there was a couple good movies out lately where they talked about the apartment they rented, and a child was hidden. It was a wonderful movie, but it was across the street. And it's sort of like if we don't look at our neighbors, if we don't guide our neighbors, then we're going to have problems. I mean, there's that one great quote, they came for another and I stood and I was quiet. They came for another and I stood, I was quiet. Then they came for me. Who's going to stand up for me? I believe we're each other's brother's keeper. So tell me, growing up as a Jew, did you feel ostracized? Do you feel ostracized now?
No, not at all. Not in America, no.
Not in America.
No. My parents said they did. They had problems. No. When I was growing up, there was segregation with blacks, African Americans. No. Actually, my older siblings both said there were quotas to go to college for Jewish people. But I'm much younger,
Right, so we can...
So I didn't have that at all. But that's why it's even more important to remember when
The
you
stories.
don't live it, you have to read and learn and listen.
And understand. And one of the important things is to have it credible stories.
Yes.
I mean, sometimes our history books are not credible. And, I worry about the stories we're telling our children if they're not credible. But
Well, that's true. That I
Okay.
didn't think about. But mine are. Everyone is more credible than the
the
next.
other, I mean, the deal.
Of course.
I'm wondering exactly, now, the Seder, excuse me for saying it wrong.
all right.
The Seder is one meal. Is it the beginning of Passover?
Passover is a week. Week long, and actually the last day of Passover is called Yizkor. Yizkor is the word, and that's the day you remember the people in your family who have died.
Wow.
They read the names of the people who have died that year, and you stand and there's a special prayer that commemorates the people who came before all of us. And it's a week. And there are two Seders. There's a first Seder and a second Seder. Some people who are more observant observe both. Some have one. Neither is right. Neither is wrong.
We're all unique under God's eyes. Go ahead.
Every one of us, and you and me are a little more unique and more fun. But we do have two Seders in my family, and they're different.
What is the difference? Why do you have two
Nothing.
Seders?
It's an old story.
Is it because you have so much?
My current reasoning is because there's so many divorced families. God was smart; He made it so you can go one night to one family and the other. But I don't think God was thinking about that. They say the reason really is that there are different time zones in the world, and they're not sure. Jewish holidays always start the night before at sunset, so they're not sure exactly when the time is where you are. So that sort of covers it.
Well, I have someone in my church who I adore a lot, and she worked for a Jewish family. Mm-hmm. But she said every Saturday she would have to drive the owner of the grocery store around. What does that mean?
Okay.
What's up with that?
I understand that. Some people, it's called Shomar Shabbat.
Shomar Shabbat.
You know what Shabbat is. It's the Sabbath. It means they don't drive. They're very on the Sabbath. They don't drive. So they have somebody who is not observant or not Jewish drive them.
Isn't that wonderful to honor that? Yes. Much. What a wonderful thing that is. We're going to be right back.
Okay.
This is Life with Psychic Suzanna. We're talking Seder Stories with Nancy Rips, and Dennis is going to take us to the music. You stay tuned. This is the station where you grow. This is the show where you'll learn more from last week to next week. Stay with us. Life with Psychic Suzanna, 1110 KFAB.
This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB.
Suzanna on 1110 KFAB, and I just want you to know when my producer Dennis says, I panic a little bit, but we're back on air. You join us every Sunday night here at 7:30. This is the show that is centered around you and around your life, giving you answers to questions you might have, also giving you more knowledge every week to take into the next week and be able to tell everybody about it. Please join us on Facebook, Life with Psychic Suzanna, our Susanna Stickney. Both of those are available, and you get an inside scoop on who's going to be on. PsychicSusanna.com. You get a free question. You get all the old shows that are available to you. Also, KFAB.com. You need to know anything about this area, you find it there. Also, we got our auction coming up. Whoop! I'm excited about that. If I can I like my money to sweat before I send it. I like it to sweat a little bit. Okay, now I am talking with Nancy Rips of the Seder Stories. She's written a book that has Passover thoughts on food, family, and freedom, and I'm going to hold you over if it's okay. I want to talk, before we go out of this time, I'd like to ask you one question. You have a chair at each Seder? for Saint Elias. Is that correct?
Close. Elijah.
Elijah. Okay.
And it's not, we don't have a chair for Elijah. What we do is pour a glass of wine for Elijah, the mythical Elijah, who supposedly visits every home on Passover. And when I was a child, Susanna, I would sit by my dad and he would say, Nancy, see the wine going down? And I would say, yes, I did. I did. He told me it was going down. It was going down. And you trusted Daddy? Yeah. And Elijah comes in once a year and he appears and as if to say, keep this all in mind. Remember Passover, the story of Passover. Tell it to your children. And it's just sort of a magical thing. It's when I had Seders at my house, I had a real Elijah who came in and the people went nuts. He played the trombone.
I love
Yeah, it would have been fun.
We're coming right back. This show is brimming over with knowledge. Get to know your brothers. Get to know your brothers. The Jews are our brothers. And we have someone here talking the Seder Stories, Nancy Rips. I like her. She's effervescent. Stay tuned. We're going to find out what the 4 questions that you ask at the Seder meal. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna. This is on 1110 KFAB. Only place you need to be. By the way, a little later, we'll be taking your calls, 558-1110 or 1-800-543-1110. Yes, you are exactly where you need to be. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. We're here every week, and this is the show that empowers you. This is the show that will help you get better every week with knowledge that you're going to learn about. Now, today we have with us the author of Seder Stories, Passover Thoughts on Food and Family and Freedom by Nancy Rips. I want you to know, if you're my friend on Facebook, you would have found that out and you would have been prepared and have your notes, paper and pencil ready to take notes. Please join me on Facebook, Life with Psychic Suzanna, Susanna Stickney, Psychic Suzanna for 1 free question, and KFAB for all the knowledge you need to know in this area. And our auction is coming up. Woo! I love that. I make my money sweat. I love my money to sweat before I spend it.
I understand.
Okay, I really work it. Seder Stories, the book of Seder Stories is really good. And you were telling us how Elijah is present in every meal. Mm-hmm.
But you wanted to talk about the 4 questions?
Well, let me get to it. I was setting it up, honey. All right, now let me go back.
Please,
Elijah.
let me go with you. You're the boss.
We match so much. We're so much fun together.
We're both real quiet, retiring types.
Just shy people. All right. So right now we're going to ask about the 4 questions. Now, what are the 4 questions?
The 4 questions are an integral part of the Seder. Children are taught to sing the 4 questions in Hebrew, and then we say it in English. Always, the tradition is the youngest child at your table asks the 4 questions because, Susanna, it goes back to teaching your children, telling them your stories. Now, the 4 questions are asked mythologically by different children. The first one is asked by the smart child who knows how to ask a question. The second one is asked by the wicked child who really doesn't want to know and he's sort of got his own agenda, but he's also a personality to be reckoned with. Mm-hmm. The third child question is asked by the slow child who it's difficult for him to even ask a question about Passover. He's not even sure about it. And the fourth is the saddest always to me every year, the one who doesn't know how to ask. Now that covers the whole spectrum of human beings because, in every family we have the kid who goes to the best college and we have one who doesn't or who has special needs of some sort or another. So it gives everyone an opportunity to learn at their own pace. Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Wonderful.
Isn't that
what
good?
Are the questions?
Yeah.
Can we ask that or is that a secret?
Oh, no. Well, the questions are not real questions. The questions, each one begins with Ma nishtana halayla hazeh in Hebrew, and that means, why is this night different from all other nights? And then each one is a little different. The questions aren't so important. It's the telling of the stories. And the answers to each of the questions are the Passover story. And that's very long. But the questions aren't important. It is important to learn to ask questions. You know, one of my very first stories.
If you don't grow, if you don't ask questions,
that's
you can't
exactly
grow.
it.
You really
and it
can't.
teaches kids from a very young age. Ask questions and listen, and people will respect you and will answer you. One of the very first responses I got when I started sending out emails was from Alan Dershowitz, who wrote me back, at my Passover Seders, my grandfather and my father would say, sit still and pay attention and let's do the service. And then he said, no questions were allowed, and just reading the whole thing in Hebrew, and nobody understands the Hebrew. And then he put a P.S. But on the plus side, my grandmother's gefilte fish has never been equaled. But then he said to me, but in my Seders now, we encourage questions and discussion from everyone. And the service is mostly in English. So it teaches children from a very young age. We are here to help you learn, and it's our responsibility. Judaism takes that seriously. It is our responsibility from generation to generation. And the Hebrew for that is dor lador, from generation to generation. It is our duty to teach our children and grandchildren.
You know, one of the saddest things is children who have never been in a synagogue or a church and have no realization of a bigger, greater power.
It is sad, and hopefully they grow up and just make these discoveries themselves.
We pray for them.
Or in whatever way.
But thank God we have Judaism and we have Orthodoxy, where we do teach our children how to handle the bigger questions in life. Tell us, how do we find Nancy Ripp's book?
Oh, well, I'm so easy. Come to the Bookworm, 87th and Pacific, and Countryside Village. And I have a website, www.nancyrips.com. I am so easy to find. And my books are on Amazon, all three of my books. You can buy them at the Bookworm. You can buy them all over the country.
Marvelous, marvelous. You have been a delight being here. I want to adopt you.
Well, I think I'm just the right age to be adopted.
Oh, hey.
I think we'd have too much fun together.
I think the town might not know what to
do. We'd have a lot of fun.
God bless. Thank you for coming. Now, how do I say goodbye?
Well, shalom means
shalom.
Hello, goodbye, and peace.
Shalom, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna. You stay tuned. We're going to talk a little fashion a little bit later, baby.
Ooh.
All right. Stay tuned right here, 1110 KFAB. By the way, you can start calling in. The numbers are 402-558-1110 or 1-800-543-1110. Let's see what's in your future and what you have the power to change in the moment.
Psychic Suzanna.
Can't get through on the radio show? Call Psychic Suzanna anytime at 712-276-9349. That's 712-276-9349. Or visit her webpage, PsychicSuzanna.com.
This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. I don't know if you know this, but my normal producer is gone somewhere south. And it's not even cold here. I don't know what's up with that. But I have this wonderful Dennis in here who's helping me. So we're learning to be with Dennis. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna, heard every Sunday night, 7:30. This is the show you come to for information that'll take you into the future. Each week we go through things that will inspire you, give you ideas. Can you believe understanding that the Judaism? I loved that, Nancy Ripp. It's a fascinating book, by the way. You're going to want to find us at Susanna Stickney on Facebook and Twitter. Also, Life with Psychic Suzanna on Facebook, which is going to let you know who's coming into our show each week. Next week, we have Eldon Taylor on. He wrote the book, I Believe. He's going to help us understand our belief system, how we can make it work for us so we're not limiting ourselves with our thoughts. The following week, we've got Stephanie coming on what animals have taught her. This is the station you come to for all the information you know. KFAB.com, PsychicSuzanna.com.